I used to do lots of things.
I used to do things and I'd say things and Jesus I was evil. Take things and break things and Jesus I was evil. I never should
Ben.
So, welcome
What?
back,
Oh,
Joe. to-
Thanks, man. It's good to be back.
You just keep showing up.
Yeah.
Are you excited? We were talking before we started about your first trip to the East Coast.
Yeah.
Is it true that you've never been east of Texas? Is this true?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. I've never been to that part of the world before. So should be pretty cool. Staying in Philly for a little bit, and then in Ocean City, and then Philly again. So yeah, man.
All right. It'll definitely be an adventure for a California kid like yourself. People
Yeah.
move a little faster, I think.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, because Rocky, Philly, the steps. So I think everyone's just kind of used to.
No,
just
what's that? Explain it to me.
Rocky Balboa, the boxer, wasn't that based in
I've
Philly?
heard of him.
Those are steps that everyone's always going up and down.
Yeah, of course. It's the art museum steps. There's
exactly.
There's a statue of him right there.
Yeah, exactly. So I think everyone's just a faster walker because of that, of all the steps.
Stronger quads.
Right, exactly. So that's why they move faster.
You know, it would be really cool, and you'd be the first person to do this if you ran to the top of the steps and like put your arms up and
yeah. Okay.
You know what's funny about that scene? Here's a little a cinema factoid for the listeners. If you watch that scene closely when he's on the top of the steps, it's actually in reverse. So he's what looks like he's like punching, but it's like coming down. Like it's really like he's elbowing, because I forget why they did that, but that's actually like him in reverse. And it's one of those things that you don't really notice until you do, and then you can't unsee it.
Right.
Yeah. So next time you watch Rocky, check that out.
So if I want to be like really faithful to the source material, I have to go down those steps backwards then, right?
No, it's not going down the steps. So he runs up the step. That would be very obvious.
Yeah.
It's when he's at the top of the steps and he's like puts his arm in the air. He's like punching the air, right? That part is actually in reverse. So even though he's really punching the air in the movie, it looks like he's kind of more like throwing his elbows back.
Oh, interesting.
See what I mean? And he's going in like an awkward circle.
Yeah.
Just I don't know, just like YouTube the scene and you can see it. It's pretty freaky once you actually see it for the first time.
Okay, so when I'll run up there.
Yeah,
going forward
and make a big announcement about it. Be like, guys, if you ever seen the movie Rocky, this is it, and run up there, and everyone will clap, and no one will throw anything at you.
And then I'll do some live annotation, like to be really faithful to the film. I'm a shadow box in reverse, okay, you guys? And then I want someone to film it and then reverse it, and then it'll be.
And they won't be like, recreation. Go back to California, queer boy.
Exactly. How will they know about the queer thing?
The hairs are given away.
Well, I'll be staying in a hostel, and they haven't made any, scary movies about hostels or anything. But it's very close to the Liberty Bell, so I think I'll bring my drumstick to ring that bell. So
yeah, you should point out there's a crack in it.
Oh, okay. I'll bring some putty then. I'll fix it while I'm there. So,
all right, that's enough of that. Moving on.
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna do a couple of articles today from the Free Press.
Real quick, just because this is related to the Free Press, and because I said I would do it.
Sakatumi.
Just pull it up real quick.
This is off script.
Yeah, this is. Yeah. Hi, Joe. Thank you for writing in and for your interest in the Free Press. We've moved forward with another candidate for this role, but please keep an eye out on our career page for additional opportunities. Best, Sean. So,
all right. Well,
I will not be working. I will not be working for the Free Press.
Well, fuck them then. We'll just wing it this episode. No, I'm kidding. But
no, I know.
They probably got a lot. They're pretty popular now. They probably got a deluge of attention. Well,
so this is one that you sent to me, Benjamin. So we want to.
Yeah, this is cool because it's like not. I like that the Free Press does this sort of stuff where it's just becoming a, an all-encompassing sort of publication where they'll have stuff that's like the obvious, explicitly political.
Yeah.
Whether that's elections, international relations, the usual issues, or they're having more like cultural things. And I think this was cool. I thought you especially would like this because I know what you like. And this is a series they're going to be doing following this. I guess I mean, he's a writer. He's a lot of things, but it's called 12 Months to Fall Back in Love with America. So the subtitle is hoping to rekindle their love of country. Newlyweds Andy and Keturah Hickman are going on a year-long honeymoon across the U.S. We're tagging along. And the author for this is A.M. Hickman. Oh, that's him. Okay. So he's publishing. This is all his writing, but the Free Press is following him and kind of publishing it as he goes.
Barry Weiss's sister, Susie Weiss, did the intro for this article too.
Okay. And this is from September 2nd, right? Yeah. And I just like this because it feels very much like sort of like an on the road type thing. And
and real quick, it feels a little bit like the sort of thing that NPR would have done before they went all
Vice. I would think more like some Vice would have done.
Yeah, where it's like, let's just highlight an interesting person.
Exactly.
And the wacky adventure they're going on.
Like a talented guy who's not the typical like Columbia journalism grad. He doesn't have much of an education, in fact, if I remember correctly. Yeah. He's from upstate New York, but he says, a part of upstate New York that's closer to the Canadian border than to Manhattan, one of these Rust Belt type towns where all of the manufacturing left, a while ago, and there's really not much industry at all. He's didn't really have much of an ideology for a while. He did join the Coast Guard for some structure. He met this girl, I don't know, I think I'm pronouncing her name correctly, Keturah, who's from interesting background in Montana, where it's almost like a mix of like back to the land type people, libertarians, hippies, Amish, like a nice, it shows, I think what's cool about this is like Americans are complicated, and not everyone, the stereotypes exist for a reason. But people are interesting. They have all types of backgrounds. I mean, she's from a community that's purposefully like off the grid, like no credit card. I don't even think they have social security numbers.
She said she was the fourth generation in her family to not have a social security number.
How's that even possible? Like, I don't know. So far into me that, but it's very, I don't know. It's a very cool concept. I'm always attracted to these sorts of things. I kind of have that romantic streak in me. And I just thought this was really cool. And he's a really good writer. This kind of stuff feels like it doesn't happen much anymore. Maybe that's more because you can just like get on a plane and fly somewhere, and there'll be like lots of travel bloggers. But this sort of thing, especially in the US, and they're purposefully traveling. So to like they got married. They're purposefully traveling to small towns. Like they're not going from Denver to Sacramento to Portland up to Seattle. It's not that. They're hitting small towns all over America. I forget what the criteria is, because you can actually write into them or write to the Free Press to say why they should visit your town. I think it's pretty small though. I think it's like 5,000 people or less. Even like my small suburb would be more than I mean, I was going to even recommend it, but I don't know what much you would see here. Yeah. Anyway, and do you want to read the beginning, or do you want me to read the intro?
Yeah. I'll read the intro here. Okay. So Susie Weiss's intro, or his, like the part where he starts.
I think it's hers, because it says my favorite writer right now.
Oh yeah. My favorite writer right now is a college dropout, former hobo who hitchhiked across the country before joining the Coast Guard and finding God. He has no permanent address, let alone a single byline in the legacy press. I didn't think people like Andy Hickman existed anymore in an age of so much sameness. So much of the most celebrated writing is suffused with high irony, a deep familiarity with being online, and, at bottom, nihilism. But then there was Andy, writing monster Twitter threads about his wild adventures and some of the most original essays on the internet. Then I saw that he'd gotten married earlier this summer to an equally fascinating woman who's the fourth generation in her family not to have a social security number, and that, instead of a trip to Europe or a week at the beach, he and Keturah were gearing up for a year-long trip across the United States for their honeymoon. They plan to visit 12 small towns as a sort of mutual audition for America. Did the country still have room for free spirits like theirs? And did they still have room for their country, which they worry is in decline and quickly becoming, in Andy's words, a grimly conformist, tattletaling, coast-to-coast HOA? So I called up the newlyweds, me from the Free Press office in New York, them from the outside of a public library in Madawaska, Maine, to see if they might want to write up for their journey for the Free Press. Today, I'm proud to announce the series Falling Back in Love with America. For the next year, Andy and Katura will take us on a tour of the oft-forgotten corners of this country, from islands in Maine to Nevada deserts to the bayous of Louisiana and many places in between. The election is coming up, and don't worry, we'll have plenty of coverage on the candidates, their donors, their policies, and the chances of winning the White House. But we wanted to bring you another type of national coverage that didn't enter on the coasts, or super PACs, or the voting habits of suburban Philadelphia moms. We are thrilled to publish Andy's introductory essay below, where he explains the project and introduces himself. Look out for new installments on their journey every month, and happy Labor Day, Susie Weiss.
Yeah, so that's the gist of it. I didn't realize it. I thought it was gonna be every week. I guess so. It's every month. I think this would be cool to kind of keep up with.
Yeah.
Have you ever done? I mean, just driving California is like a long trip, but like, what's the longest road trip you've done?
Probably
LA to San Jose.
Most likely. I'm sure I've done like a little bit longer. I think I've driven down to San Diego, which is like an hour or two south of LA from the Bay Area. But yeah,
gotcha.
Yeah.
So like that, is that Route 1 or?
I think you can take 101, which runs parallel. It's a little more inland. It's faster, but it does run parallel with Highway 1.
What were we on when we were in Malibu the first time I came out there?
That was Highway 1. Yeah.
That's Highway 1. Yeah, that's a very cool road.
Yeah.
Yeah, the longest I've ever done, especially when I'm driving, the longest I've done is like North Jersey, like New York suburbs to New Orleans, which was like an 18-hour. I split it like half. I stopped in Knoxville, Tennessee. Yeah. And that's the longest I've done. I think it's really like the American road trip is a very cool thing. Yeah. That's I think very unique to America because you can see, not that a lot of countries don't have this, but one where it's massive. Like if you do a road trip of like Spain, that's like doing a road trip of Texas, right? Or doing a road trip of Italy would be like doing a road trip of California. Like those are just our states. Yeah. And those are entire countries. And I do like that. Like I was always a big fan of On the Road. I think I've read it a couple times. And I don't even really like driving far. Like I really don't. Like after 2 hours, but like that's when it's destination driving, like to get from point A to point B. But the concept of the road trip and stopping at different places is very American, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah, but there's also something interesting too, where it's like, I think that experience has been diluted, and by like the fact that you can whip up an itinerary very quickly, and you can just look up like, oh, what's the best neighborhood to stay in? What's the nicest hotel for this price? Whereas before, up until like the last couple of decades, it's like, yeah, I want to drive to some place. I don't know exactly. Maybe there's something cool on the way there. If I'll stop, even if it's not part of my itinerary. I've never been out there, so I'm just going to go and see what it's like. I don't know what the nicest neighborhood is. I don't know anybody who lives out there who can give me recommendations. So I'm just going to go and hopefully it's a cool neighborhood, sort of thing.
Yeah, I don't know if that I don't know. Do you think that's just nostalgia? Where I saw a meme recently that was like, it was Blockbuster and it had a sign out front that was like, "You don't miss us, you just miss childhood." Like, do we really miss Blockbuster? Do we really miss having to get in the car and go somewhere and maybe they have a movie that you want a certain movie, they don't even have it, and there's a line and late fee and they have to drop it off and all of that? Or do you just miss being 11?
Where it's like it was a Friday night and then your parents were taking you, hey kids, let's go rent a movie, and it's like, oh, just that was fun.
That was fun. It was, and I like those memes. I follow those sorts of accounts like 90s, 2000s nostalgia. Yeah. I don't get me wrong, I think there were some parts of growing up that way that legitimately were like, I always think of video games. Like I don't really play video games anymore. I have like an arcade in my house, like old school video games, but I don't have like a video game system. Right. But growing up, there was something so great about like like for instance, the 4-person N64. When the N64 came out, you could play. I think that was the first system that you could play 4, right?
I think so.
Like that was revolutionary. Piling into someone's basement, having your friends come over, going to someone's house, having dominoes, like being together and playing games was something that once, and even when I was in high school, like Xbox Live, when that stuff came on, like we would still play together, but we would all be at each other's houses. Or at our own houses, I should say.
Right.
And that was fun too. And but now kids, like I don't know what kids do nowadays. I don't talk to kids because it'd be weird if I did. I'm a 34-year-old man without children. So but I do feel like that sort of thing is missing, where like a generation before us, like the Gen Xers, their thing was like you always knew where to go because like there'd be all the bikes outside next to the, you know, whatever that the electrical system is at the cul-de-sac, you know, like that's where the bikes were, and that's like their version of it. Or I look at Stranger Things, like Stranger Things was kind of a generation right before us. I feel like Stranger Things are kind of like later Gen Xers, where they're playing like Dungeons and Dragons in each other's basement instead of playing N64, right? Where that was like the next iteration. I think that sort of thing is missed, and that's like a legitimate change. I don't know so much about. I'm going to a city, and I don't know if this hotel is going to be, you know, fraudulent and corrupt and dangerous. Right. I do kind of like being able to go read reviews.
Oh yeah. I'm not knocking, you know, the conveniences. And I do love, you know, being able to like, okay, cool. I'm staying in a nice place. It's got a good price, you know, and it's convenient for me. And it's still in a neighborhood that's close to all the touristy things or whatever. But at the same time, you know, there is something fun about like the mystery of like, I mean, like, you know, like my dad and his friends, when they were like, you know, in their late teens, early 20s, and they went on a road trip to LA together, and it's sort of like, you know, they all grew up in like poor, like working class Mexican households. So for them, like, hey, let's just go to LA. I booked a hotel that was cheap, that was in their price. I don't know, I don't know if it's in a nice part of Hollywood or a shitty part of Hollywood. Let's just go and see how it goes. So you know, there is like a little bit of like mystery gone, I think, with modern, like the modern American road trip. So, but
did your dad grow up in the Bay Area?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't know. One thing I would like to do a like there's certain parts of the country that I would like to do a road trip. I don't want to drive out there. I want to like fly out to a place and then like do it. Like I want to fly like New Mexico and do like part of old Route 66, go up to maybe like Taos or Santa Fe and hit some of that and just do like a road trip around there. I definitely want to I want to fly to Miami and then do Miami out to Key West. Like that in and of itself is supposed to be a wonderful trip. Like just that drive is like a must do. I'm more into that kind of stuff now. I don't need to drive, you know, halfway. Like I don't need to drive New Jersey to Chicago to see, you know, Indiana. like if you're and I'm sure Indiana has some great spots, like maybe some cool small town. I've been to South Bend. Besides that, I haven't really been to Indiana, but you know, I don't really have that, and I don't have the time to do that either.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I don't have the time to I'm a professional. Like I have clients and like obligations.
There's only so much PTO you can spend.
Exactly. Yeah. Like I'm on a big honeymoon. I'm basically doing like not a road trip of Italy, but we're taking trains to most of the places. Like once we fly there, we're kind of training all around for 3 weeks. So that would be very, very cool. I guess I did like a road trip of Europe because my friend and I, we were on buses for like 3 months, just like going around Europe, which we saw a lot of just like flat Germany, like that sort of thing. So anyway,
this guy's going on like a pure American road trip.
Which
like,
is
he doesn't
really
know anything
cool
about what he wants.
Exactly. One thing I like about it is that I like the idea that like where the fuck is Madawaska, Maine? Like right, that's not Portland, Maine. That's not even Bangor, Maine. Like it's Madawaska, Maine. I think that's really cool that he's personally going to these small places because that's where he's from.
Yep.
All right, should I read a little?
Yeah, go for it.
All right, so it starts. High on the road to Reno, hard-eyed and hungover, I stood. The dust was flying down the high, hard pan plains and screaming wind devils, but I hardly noticed anything anymore. Bearded, greasy, and leaning against my filthy old rucksack out in the sand by the empty highway, I wasn't a 25-year-old I wasn't the 25-year-old the high school guidance counselor might hold up as a portrait of success. I was a vagabond, a hobo, a stone broke drifter who'd been wandering all 48 of America's contiguous states for the past 5 years. I was a college dropout, precariously poor and occasionally penniless. I labored in fields harvesting melons and citrus with migrantes, embedded down in culverts and ditches. In all, I spent over 1,000 nights outside camping illegally. I ate garbage and drank liquor. I brawled in rail yards with the punks and hopped on freight trains with anarchists. I became an anarchist too. I slipped out of the world of clocks and telephones and ambitions and became an oblation to a distant god or spirit, letting whatever volition I had in the hours and miles of my vagabonding dangle along the road behind me. I carried no map, and if I ever kept my eye on the grand old flag, it was with a leery eye. All right, so that's kind of like the setup of, he gives a lot of background there. And then that last part is saying like he wasn't a very patriotic guy. I think he, his America was, I think, and he talks about it later, I'll get into it, but his America was like forgotten America, upstate New York, deindustrialized, lots of, I think, drug abuse and unemployment and scraping to get by and living off the government at the same time. Should I continue?
Yes.
Okay. But on that day in Nevada, something in me began to change. It was there, somewhere along Interstate 80, where I raised my eyes along the highway, the Burger King sign glowing like a weird surrogate moon. I wondered at the billboard bearing the words, "The kingdom of heaven is at hand. Call 855-4-truth!" ! I kind of love, like, I don't know if it's kitschy is the right term, or even is it kitschy where it's like this kind of shit, like this kind of America, I love, for instance, like personal injury lawyer ads,
right?
Just that. Yeah. I guess that's like campiness. What's the difference? I heard once, like, difference between kitsch and camp is that, like, kitsch isn't self-aware.
Right.
Or maybe it's the opposite. No, camp is definitely self-aware.
Yeah.
But anyway, I love that kind of stuff. Just like these like absurd, like religious, or the, I always talk on this show about how much I love just like the snake oil salesman, the American swindler, fraudster, charlatan. Like, I think just that's part of our DNA.
Yeah.
And I've always appreciated that sort of thing. The kingdom of heaven is at hand, and you call a 855 number. Like, I just love that sort of stuff. Yeah, no, definitely. And it's like, of course they would do it like out in the middle of nowhere. They would not do that like in a major city. Yeah, sure. It's like, no, we're trying to capture vagabonds who are just kind of wandering or something. Yeah. All right. I thought of the book of Ezekiel. This is what the sovereign Lord says to these bones. I will make breath enter you, and you will come to life. I will attach tendons to you and make flesh come upon you and cover you with skin. I will put breath in you, and you will come to life. I thought of this scripture, although I hadn't read it in years, because as far as I could ever tell in my years of hitchhiking, America was just in a world of bones, busted down shacks and boarded up gas stations, Vicodin popping carpenters and rusty old Fords, fallow fields and broken oil rigs by sad, abandoned towns. I'm from one of those towns. I grew up in the seldom seen depths of upstate New York in a tiny hamlet that's closer to Canada than it is to Manhattan. As a boy, I wasn't hard to recognize, and my village wasn't the sort of place anyone was moving to. In fact, everyone was moving out to Florida or Carolina or some other sweltering hot, low-tax state. Why they were leaving, I didn't yet know. With burdocks in our hair and blackberries in our bellies, us boys, me, my best friend, and my cousin would crawl on hand and foot up the steep canyons along the river gorge, miles back in the woods. When we got hungry, we'd bike down to my aunt's place for piles of grilled chicken and macaroni, sitting quietly by the fire as we heard the adults speak bitterly about politics, quote unquote, and slugged Miller High Life. Hells yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm going to do a couple more paragraphs. Yeah. When those same adults took to asking me what I'd do now that I was becoming a man, it dawned on me that I'd probably leave too. There weren't any jobs worth having in our ragged old hamlet. In fact, there weren't many jobs at all. Farms were going belly up, and all the manufacturing had left the county a lifetime ago. And as far as I could tell, I wouldn't want a job anyway. Anyone I knew who worked looked miserable. And if I ever pointed that out, my mother would say, "That's why you've got to go to college." While I plodded through college a while, also in upstate New York, the old adage of quote unquote, "Go west, young man," sat in my mind as an axiomatic truth. It didn't take long to drop out, grab a sleeping bag, and drift west. I had no real idea of what I might find out there, but I know well enough that there wasn't anything for me back home. So, as a Easterner, like I do kind of get this, and I catch myself actually in a lot of what I write, like as someone who's born and bred on the East Coast, like there's always there's like this mythical idea of it's like especially California,
right?
Like there's this like this mythos around it of the it's this Eden. It has everything. The food is plentiful. The weather is perfect. The beaches, that's where beautiful people are. That's where you go to, like that. That's where the American dream is alive. And I kind of resent the fact that that's just like not the case anymore. I don't think that's an arguable point.
Right.
In fact, California's lost population, or like, if you don't count immigrant population, where I don't think it's really necessarily like where they're coming from. California is going to be much better for the most part.
Right.
But like, if you look at intra-country migration, like a lot of people, California's losing people.
Yep.
It's lost, I think, for the first time in its history, number in the electoral college, and lost House votes or House districts. And I think that really sucks because, as I've said, the first time I came out there, like I wanted to be like that mythos was very much present in my life. I thought I would be, I don't know, necessarily a California person. I always loved the idea of Hawaii too. Then I realized how far that really was. But just that idea where it would be sunny and warm and funny people lived out there and beautiful people lived out there. And like it was successful, but it was also laid back. Like it just seemed perfect. And I still like the whole "Go West, my son" thing. Like I love that part of our history.
Mm-hmm.
It's sad that that's really changed, and I guess that's just time. Like part of it's obviously politics.
Yep.
And I don't mean don't mean like rip on your home state and where you live.
Oh, I mean, I agree with everything you're saying. Like,
that
idealized version of Tinseltown is still very much in my mind, but because I've been here for a while, it's like that's kind of lost. It's kind of like a dream that
maybe it never was there. I don't know. Like we were just talking about nostalgia with Blockbuster and 64. Like I don't know. Maybe there was a perfect time. Like
I'm not sure actually. So back. And it's kind of a very quick tangent, but but I mean, like in the late 40s and early 50s, you started to see movies coming out that explored the dark side of Hollywood.
Yeah, what's that big one? Well, actually, never mind.
Well, there's Sunset Boulevard. That's the granddaddy of them. But there were a few others.
Yeah.
I
was thinking LA Confidential, but that didn't come out then. That takes place then, though.
Right, but it did reference historical events. But it did. But that was kind of like a stylized and fictionalized version of some truth. So that there was a lot of sleazy, there were like the sleazy underworld.
Night of the Locust.
That was another one. But like, it only took a couple decades before movies started to come out, and it's like, no, being a big star in Hollywood isn't that great. Actually, it's actually pretty terrible.
Yeah.
And so even as far back as like the late 40s and 50s, people were already starting to realize that it was not as glamorous as it was presented to the world. So
and even still, like with all its problems, I do get it. Like the two times I've been out there to hang with you.
Yep.
Like I love your neighborhood is very cool. Like has that feel to it. Like there's even that sign. Like this was part of the historic Route 66.
Yep.
Like those 1 floor, 2 floor buildings, that kind of main drag.
Yep.
I get like Sunset Boulevard is very cool.
Yep.
I get all of that. I've never even we drove through Beverly Hills, Malibu, but I mean a lot of that's just out of reach to people.
Yeah.
And maybe it was back then too, but like there seemed to be more of a thriving middle class where like you could move out there, work not as a movie star, but work on the set or something, or work like, I don't know, work in a restaurant even, and like have a little house, and there was these cool neighborhoods all throughout that. Like we drove to the Michael Jackson neighborhood. What does the house go for in that neighborhood? Like the Thriller house, like like this like idealistic house. I don't, this idealistic neighborhood, like idyllic neighborhood, I should say. Like I'm sure that there's not a house on that street under $1 million. I would think.
Yeah. No, definitely. Because I mean, it was also like a preserved, like historical Victorian neighborhood too. So,
yeah.
But yeah, man.
Yeah, I know. I mean, ow, fuck. Sorry, Phoebe, that hurt. Ow, Jesus. Sorry, my couch like clawed my leg. All right. Yeah. I'll continue.
Yeah.
Okay. At the age of 19, I raised my thumb for the first time. America spun in my head, and time began to pass strangely. My sojourn was indefinite and unconstrained. 5 years passed, standing by the roadside. That's wild, by the way.
Yeah.
Like that he was doing this, doing it. What's that even called? Hitchhiking. Yeah, wild. I saw the country for what it was. Watching my own hayseed innocence wither in a world of strip malls, strip clubs, and strip mines. I drifted through the depressed oil towns in Wyoming and rode freight trains by the clear cuts of Washington state. I saw overdoses in New Orleans and hitchhiked my way into the cars of suicidal men in Utah and Ohio. In time, a certain darkness crept up on me and locked me in. For this was no country of Huckleberry Finn. It was a sprawling gigaplex of droning homogeneity. Coast to coast, anything like the varied vibrance of the past seemed to have been paved over everywhere. The souls of men and women seemed to have been paved over as well. Everywhere, a monoculture of profligacy flourished. I don't even know that word. Feverish men gnawing for heroin and bottom shelf liquor. Greyhound bus breakdowns and fickle cops and suicide hotline billboards and big neon signs advertising girls, girls, girls. Where Laura Ingalls Wilder's own great-granddaughter was doubtless gyrating with dead eyes. La Migra immigration enforcement would do their sweeps in the encampments a stone throws away from a world of antidepressants and tax debts. When the patriarchs of that world, gray-haired and divorced, picked me up, they'd mumble to me about how things used to be with sad eyes as we rolled in their SUVs by the miles of barbed wire and empty plain. Everywhere a rattling juxtaposition between the gutter and Disneyland, between Dickensian ghetto scenes and Botoxed green lawn realms of bureaucracy and comfort. As far as I could tell, somewhere along the line, old acquaintance had indeed been forgot. But just as I felt myself giving in, sinking deep into the idea that America's demise had picked up unstoppable momentum, I would see the land. The white-capped mountains yawning to the heavens, the Ocotillo's fingers sneaking through a Sonoran desert sandstorm, the Missouri River's galloping current. And there would be the people. People who understood such rousing visions not merely as scenery, but as the simple truths around which they oriented their lives. Men with faces like the dry arroyos they dwelt upon, tow-headed children inseparable from their amber waves of grain, Sioux aunties with some Oldsmobiles. Standing at the truck stop where the brake pad dust mixed with exhaust in the breeze, where the shimmering heat rose from the high-speed asphalt, I stared up at the big Bible billboard and thought about bones, not those in the book of Ezekiel. I wasn't religious back then, but about bones of America and whether, like a solid old house I can only fantasize about, they were still good. I signed on the dotted line at the military entrance processing station in Albany. I had 13 cavities and 17 cents to my name. And in August 2019, at the age of 25, I raised my right hand to swear an oath to defend and uphold the Constitution of the United States. So help me God. Want me to keep going?
Well, I mean, we could probably summarize the next few paragraphs because, so he joins the National Guard, I believe. And then
the Coast Guard,
the Coast Guard, and he's kind of stationed around the U.S. for a bit, but at some point he stumbles upon a mass, and then he becomes religious. And then not long after that, I believe, is when he meets Uh,
I do want to say I think it's cool. He was at the Coast Guard base right in Cape May, which is Cape May, New Jersey.
yeah.
That's where I'm having my mini moon, whatever. So what?
Cape May?
Yeah.
You're getting hitched at a military base?
No.
Oh.
Honey, no, there's a Coast Guard down in Cape May.
Oh.
Yeah. That's where he was.
This is, it's a pretty long article, so I don't know, maybe just kind of skip to where he meets the lady.
Yeah.
Katura, I think.
Katura.
Yeah, and she's got kind of a funky family.
Definitely. I'm trying to find where it kind of starts with her.
I got her here.
Okay.
Want me to take her?
Yeah.
Toward the end of my service, I met her. It began with a telephone call after a mutual friend introduced us, and then a letter, and then a volley of letters that had me sprinting daily to the mailbox. Finally, she sent one containing the words, "If you would like to come for a visit." Straight away, I packed the car for the 36-hour drive from upstate New York to Montana. At a truck stop in Ohio, I telephoned her father to ask his blessing. But this wasn't out of dating or a fling, but a proper courtship. And when he answered, I swear I heard him smile through the telephone. "Well, we're just some simple people, I don't mind if you want to get to know her," he said. "I think you'll like it here with us." Where my own family's tenuous relationship with modern American ambitions and values had been largely accidental and frosted with the inertia of intergenerational poverty, theirs was a family whose opting out had been deliberate from when they arrived in the 17th century. Where my own uncles might have rambled through their unemployed years with a half-baked thought of getting a job and some money, even if they never actually bothered, hers shunned the very idea of jobs and careers and wealth, rejecting modern American notions of success as a matter of principle. As I arrived at their family compound in the high Rocky Mountains of Montana, I felt as if I were traveling back into a more primitive and pure vision of our country. Theirs was a place where Johnny Appleseed himself would feel at home. With 12 children, all homeschooled, my in-laws' place was less like a family's home and more like a small village populated with wild kids, both goats and children. Bearded men of a devoutly religious persuasion, geese, cows, junkyards, mobile homes, buses, and sheds for sale. Cash only.
Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on homeschooling?
I'm becoming increasingly in favor of it.
Yeah, and you see what the hell they're doing in the public schools in California.
Well, it's so funny because there was always like that stereotype of like, when you met an awkward kid, and then it's like, oh, they're homeschooled, that's why they're like that. And it's like, I prefer my kid to be awkward.
Did you know any homeschool kids?
I can't think of any off the top of my head. I think it was like if I went to some kind of event or some kind of community event or some family celebration or something, it's like, oh, that's the
I could see California almost having homeschool, but it's like for like a super hippie liberal reason,
right? Like
almost that kind of population. Like maybe they don't want to get the vaccines and they like are so there's like a horseshoe, I think, theory type thing here that like California libertarianism type thing.
Right, definitely.
I knew one homeschool kid who was a good friend of mine in college. His parents were Mennonite preachers.
Oh wow.
Or his dad was, at least. I'm not sure his mom was, and he was great. Like super, kind of like I don't know if it's like a stereotype, say, like super like salt of the earth type kid, loyal and just like a good dude. I miss him. I haven't seen him in a while. I think he just kind of went into a different lifestyle after college. I won't get into like his personal life, but I hope he's doing well.
Sure.
And I think that was the stereotype kind of brooded about the country, was like, homeschool kids are all weird, usually religious, socially awkward. And I'm like, you see what the kids look like nowadays?
I know.
Like, I remember, and it's, I think also, I mean, I just said the one homeschool kid I did know, his parents were literally Mennonite preachers in Pennsylvania. But like I was getting surgery, like a minor surgery last year. And one of the I don't know if it was a doctor or a nurse, and it was like around, I guess, when school was starting again. It might have been August 2023. I can't really remember. Maybe around that time. And the doctor asked him, your kid's going back to school. He's like, oh no, we homeschool. Like holy shit! Like this nurse in New Jersey, Like that's not how you really think of doing the homeschooling, right?
Right.
Like that sort of thing. But I was like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I don't think it's that common in New Jersey, but then I don't know. Like I'm not sure. All right.
Yes.
Continue?
Yeah, it's a couple more paragraphs on this. The Lambs eschew credit cards, corporate jobs, social security numbers, and bank loans. Modern bureaucracies were remote to them. For 4 generations, they have resisted the new America of suburban sprawl and the neurotic consumerism and bureaucracy of American life since World War II. Their faith in America's old ways has not wavered. Katura appeared in the doorway as a beauty in the mountain sunlight, dressed in a manner that makes you wonder whether she's a hippie or whether she's Amish. If you asked her which she was, she might have said yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this kind of sums up in many ways what the article is kind of about, where it's like, he's not looking at this through the lens of left or right or conservative or progressive. It's like, there's just so many different shades to the American existence that are so ignored by the press, by the media, and by politicians, because it's either like, if you're on the left, if you're a politician on the left, then you're representing, like urban Gen Z, purple-haired communists, America hating types. Or if you're on conservatives, then it's like, you're just representing, the old white farmers, and that's it. It's like those are the only two, things that are represented. And it's like, no, there's so many shades to that.
Yeah, and people are complicated, and in the end, unfortunately, I'm starting to get the feeling that the right is becoming the more online party. Right. I think the Democrats, not to get into a whole political thing, but I think they've actually done a fairly good job of not letting the worst of their extreme start like they did in 2020.
Right.
And I think they've curtailed that. You have not seen their political, their candidates really lean into their identities. They're trying to focus more on issues. Again, I think they're terrible. Yeah. I think they're phony. I'm just talking strictly here from like a consultant perspective, where the right is becoming like fucking Laura Loomer is in Trump's plane. Like, and it's just like falling for the dumbest shit. And most Americans, the vast majority of Americans, don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Right. And don't know what these online things are. That's the problem with DeSantis. And like, where you can channel that and be like, parents don't like having their kids learn that like they're oppressors and their classmates are the like that. You don't need to like be online for that kind of stuff, really. Right. They don't like this other stuff. And this goes both ways. And I retweeted Nate Silver recently. I think it was today even. And he said, like, I think whoever the more online party is this election loses. And I'm starting to get the feeling that's going to be the Republicans.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's almost like don't get me wrong. I'm glad Elon bought Twitter. I think that's good. I think that's helped in a lot of ways. Yeah. But I think politically they need to get more to bread and butter issues. They need to focus on not the craziest parts of immigration that might not even be true, but like just the problems with it that all types of people in Chicago and black neighbors in Chicago are experiencing, and people in rural Ohio are experiencing, and also like that sort of thing in economics and classic family table issues that you can be Katura and her family in Montana and you want these sorts of things. You don't want the prices of food to go up. Right. You don't want, you want your freedoms intact. And I think that's how you really win elections still in this country. As much as we feel like people are online, actually, like the vast majority of people are not. Right.
Yeah. And this was a refreshing read because it reminded me so much of like that sort of very free spirited. That's not too left or right, and probably just more libertarian, really. But that's sort of like sort of Bukowski, Kerouac, Hunter Thompson thing of just like
that's what I was thinking of when I read this and why I thought you'd like this. This to me reminded me of like Hunter S. Thompson, Kerouac, Bukowski in a way. I don't know if he did any trouble. He's a LA kid.
Yeah. But in a sense where it's like it's more just like that free spirited, live and let live, go out and meet people. Not everyone, turn on the TV and that's a bad representation of what America is. Go to a local dive bar, go to a small town. Yeah. and that's where you'll meet some true kindred spirits. Yeah, this was, even though much of the article is the author kind of being, a little disdainful of what America has become, it was still kind of refreshing to read. Like, there are still people like this where it's just like, I'm just trying to get by, dude. I'm just trying to, live my life and meet people and have a nice time. And America used to be the type of place to do that. So,
like, it's cool because he was definitely dealt a raw deal, right? He was born into one of these ubiquitous towns that neoliberalism screwed over. The drug epidemic and whatever you want to call it. They're plenty of culprits, but he could have been one of them. Like, he could have just gotten addicted to drugs and lived off of welfare and not really made anything of himself. And like, he went and he served his country. Like, he followed, like, this is really romantic. Like, he called up her dad and asked to like court her, and like, he didn't have to do that. He could have said like, meet me halfway, and we'll run away together. And like, and he didn't do any of that. I'm sure that, he kind of talks about here, he was brawling and stuff, and I'm sure he wasn't a model citizen for all his life, but he definitely went on the right route, and he didn't end his life that way. Like, he's clearly going down the right path, and he's clearly a talented writer. It's really cool how he learned, and kind of shows like some people just have it. Because he says he went to college for a little. He doesn't say where, but I don't think he even graduated. He definitely didn't graduate. And this is just like the sort of stuff that you don't see a lot of anymore.
Right. So could be fun to check to return to this. And
I definitely want to, and I just love that the Free Press is doing something like this. Let's just finish it up. I know we're running along here. I do want to. So let's just go to, they kind of ponder, they talk about actually leaving the country, maybe go to Mexico, maybe Argentina. But they're like, no, we're American. And I like that too. Like, they didn't cut and run. We're Americans. We want to explore this country. He says it sounded nice. We kicked around talked about Mexico. They could live down there. It was like America in the 1950s. It sounded nice. We kicked around the idea of Argentina too. But I couldn't help but remember that billboard and remember what I have felt deep in my own bones. The bones of America are good. And I think that's, I think it's very cool. I'm excited to learn about their travels, where they're going to go. They're doing it for a year. They're doing each town. We plan to travel for a period of 12 months through the nation's hinterland, seeking out regions that constitute the richest expressions of both their local culture and of the American vision and spirit. Each town will be a small town, less than 5,000 people, the kind of place we can imagine one day raising children of our own. We'll take buses, we'll take Amtrak, we'll go around states like Nebraska and Louisiana. We'll meet everyone we can. Do you have a town in mind? And then we'll wrap this up. Like, where would you send them? And it doesn't have to be under 5,000. Let's say like a small town. Like, that might be relative because some states just have so many more people. Like, their small towns are like 10,000. But
there's a cool little coastal town called Cambria. It's in the central coast of California here.
Cool.
And it's kind of surrounded by other small, like, little coastal towns, but each one kind of has like a different vibe. But where it's like there's one or two main streets and then a handful of residential neighborhoods, and that's about it. And then just miles of beautiful coasts, on Highway 1 there. And it's like,
it's cool.
Very few, if any, chains. There are not too many Starbucks or anything like that. So it's just sort of like, it's all just mom and pop shops and seafood and beaches and stuff. So probably somewhere on the Central Coast, California, I think.
That is cool. In California, not that I've even been there, but I've always had a love for like the San Luis Obispo region. Los Olivos. That's because I'm a lover of the movie Sideways. And I'm looking it up. That Los Olivos only has 1,200 people.
Cool.
So I don't know. Maybe you've been there and it's like, oh, it's not great. But that whole area, I've just had such a romantic idea of it because of that movie. And I've always wanted to go.
No, there's some really cool little coastal towns that they're also very scenic. Where just person, I would love to do like a horror movie where it's just like, oh, there's like this beautiful and nice, peaceful little town, with the dark secret.
Well, that's very very Lovecraftian.
Oh yeah.
I probably actually would, and not that he would like. Cape May is probably what I would say for New Jersey. It has so much character to it. Has these like beautiful, what are called, I think called like gingerbread homes or cookie. Like there's a lot of history there. It's small. It's beautiful. It's on the beach. I just love it there. Or I would say Wildwood, New Jersey, which is one of my favorite towns. That's like it has all this doo-wop architecture, tons of history. That's the one I talked about where the first time that Rock Around the Clock was ever played was there. Chubby Checker and the Twist was kind of made famous there. Bobby Rydell has like so much character to it. It has a big like it's actually like I was just there. They like love Trump there. That's why Trump always does a rally there. And so they got all this like Trump stuff, and there's lots of like the big Latino populations, old, cool, kind of rundowny houses and neighborhoods. But this is a very cool area. So that's where I'd recommend someone, like them, like someone doing this kind of thing. You want like a smallish town in New Jersey? I would do one of those with a lot of character.
Yeah.
All right.
So, check back in and for this continuing installment. So
well, I think this will be fun. I like this kind of stuff. It changes up a little. All right, now we're gonna talk about drag.
So I saw this, and it just reminds me so much of like the sort of intersectional pretzel type stuff where it just kind of like starts eating itself. So this is also in the Free Press. So it's called "Can a Woman Be a Drag Queen?" Once the preserve of gay men, the drag scene is now filled with female performers who get mixed reviews.
This is so not surprising to me, by the way. Because I was saying this years ago when I was like, when drag became, it used to be like a countercultural subculture thing. And then when it turned into like the scores of bachelorette parties cramming themselves in there after a brunch of drinking, and it like just became, honestly, to use this term, it became like basic. The next logical conclusion was that some of those women just want to do it themselves, and it totally defeats the purpose of drag. I think this is, I mean, you're right, this is just like the typical, to use a worn out term, neoliberal sort of bland, myopic, soulless, usual logical conclusion to like these issues that were once countercultural and cool.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I thought that was like the definition of drag, which is somebody doing the, dressing up as the opposite gender. Like I thought that was the whole purpose. And this article like even covers women doing drag as men, but it just never really caught on. It just wasn't very popular. So to me, like the default was men dressing up as women in like these hyper over the top ways. I've been to a couple drag shows. I don't care for them. I mean, I can see the appeal and I could appreciate certain
I don't like it. It's not for me.
I can appreciate some aspects of it, but it's not for me. But it's like whatever. I'm glad that people enjoy it and it's a fun, scandalous thing to do. But when it became like RuPaul's and it became Wine Mom, Suburban, take your kids to the drag reading. RuPaul went on cable TV. Like it lost. It's like as much as I don't particularly want to go see a drag show. I liked it for the like what it was for culture. And when it went mainstream, that's boring. Like RuPaul, it's funny because like we're actually agreeing with him with RuPaul's quote here. So this is from 2018. Drag loses its sense of danger and its sense of irony when it's not men doing it, because at its core is a social statement and a big FU to male-dominated culture. So for men to do it, it's really punk rock because it's a real rejection of masculinity. I don't care about that last part, but the idea of it being kind of like dangerous and it's kind of scandalous and it's like if you want to go to a drag show, like only certain clubs in a certain part of town did it, sort of thing. But now this is so fucking mainstream. It's like, I mean, it just, like the other like, related issue of trans, people getting into sports where it's just like, It's like you have competing left-wing groups where it's like women want the right to do this. It's a very feminist thing, but now trans people are getting, so now it's like setting women back, and so it's like,
well, there's also a problem here because I don't like drag and trans are different things,
right?
And like I think a lot of drag queens are like, no, we're not women. Like we know that that's what makes it funny and interesting and appealing. Like we're not like we're being I'm probably not the authority on this, but we're like it's camp.
Yeah.
Like if I was actually trying to be a woman, this would actually be super offensive and not okay. And I think kind of that merger of these two things in the basic bitch wine mom, the firmament, whatever you want, like the culture of these things clashing, it does get confusing. And like, no, they're actually very different.
Yeah.
Like a lot of trans people just want to live their lives and are not these stereotypes. They're just, for whatever reason, they believe that they're born in the wrong body and they, go through the surgeries and they just want to live their life as the other gender. This is an artistic, like this is art.
Right.
It's art I don't particularly care for,
Sure.
but it's art nonetheless.
Yep.
And I've heard this from like drag queens. I've listened to podcasts with them. One was on Red Scare, which I like a lot. And he talks about this, and he also hates just kind of, now I don't agree with him on the, like, I think the normalizing of gay relationships was a good thing. I think that made it a lot more accepting to people, but he was like, no, part of it was being dangerous. It was fun.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to live this suburban, boring life. I want to like have sex with lots of partners and live in the city and stay out late and do all that. Like that's what was fun about my culture, not, raising 2.1 kids in the suburbs and getting married. But he as a broad acceptance of it, like it was clearly the right path. And I've always said the smartest thing that the LGBT community did, I don't like that term, but was promote these things like, no, these are American values. We want to raise children. We want to live just like you. Like we don't want to live that scandalous life. Same thing that the Clintons did with abortion, safe, legal, and rare. I'm sorry, my cat took a shit during this, and it smells so bad that I'm like catching my breath. So I'm gonna stop real quick. But hold on, because this is really gross.
Yeah.
Jesus, buddy. My God. Oh, brutal.
This is an amazing endorsement for why you should get a dog instead of getting a cat. Dogs can do it outside, usually.
Oh, that's so rough. I was like trying not to breathe. Sorry about that.
Yeah, to piggyback off of that, the reason I brought up the trans thing was an example of like two competing very hyper progressive things that are now like encroaching on like trans rights is now encroaching on women's rights now.
Sure.
So with this, it's like, drag was like, that was something created by and for gay men, and now you have women going like, yeah, I can do drag too. And it's like, oh great, here we go. So now it's like we got to make space for women now. But I mean, this is what happens when ideology takes over. It just starts competing with itself. But yeah, this just
why? Because this is about Chappelle Roan. Basically, we
yeah. I actually want to read that the intro. So Chappelle Roan is suddenly famous since her breakout song came out earlier this year. The pop star has been called the next big queer pop icon, the new Lady Gaga and Gen Z's Madonna. Her costumes are elaborate, her music is danceable, her lyrics are sapphic, and perhaps most interesting, Chappelle Roan isn't a real person. She's the drag alter ego of a 26-year-old woman from Missouri named Kaylee Amstutz. Drag, traditionally, is the art of exaggeratedly impersonating the opposite sex. But Kaylee Amstutz is a biological woman who identifies as such and her drag persona. Chappelle Roan is a female character. There's no cross-dressing involved here, so why does she call herself a drag queen? So this is where like that sort of postmodernism, starts creeping into ideology, where it's like, well, it's just whatever I say it is. It's, there's no objective reality. It's just, words can be whatever I want. As Azimuth Amstutz explains in an interview that recently went viral on TikTok, Chappelle Roan, which she's used as a synonym for nearly a decade, became a drag project last year in June 2023. Drag queens frequently Chappelle Roan's shows, open Chappelle's shows, and around at that time, a male drag performer saw Amstutz putting on makeup backstage before a show in London and declared her a drag queen. It may have been a joke, but Amstutz took it to heart. That was very altering, and I've taken this on as an identity, she told the interviewer. So this article confused me at times because it went back and forth between and the drag queen, and then put in parentheses male. And the drag queen was, that's what I want to talk about, like the terms that were used here. There was it AFAB, assigned female at birth, drag queen, and then there's
God.
There were some really weird ones. God. There were a few of them. I should have written them down. But anyway, yeah. Bio queens. Since then, though, female drag queens, alternatively known as bio queens or AFAB queens for assigned female at birth, have been flooding the scene. So now it's like you got different types of drag queens that are just women, but then it just gets complicated when, I don't know. This is just like a weird monoculture eating itself.
Yeah, I think that's the takeaway from this. And like I said, this is the logical conclusion to mainstreaming a subculture. And I'm not saying she shouldn't be doing what she's doing. When I don't really, she looks like a pop star to me. I don't really care. I think her sounds sketchy. I like it. And I saw one of her performances. I thought it was cool because it had like a bunch of knights and like fire and shit. What's her pyrotechnics?
Yeah.
But I had no idea that she was consider herself a drag queen. I think like they talk here about drag kings, and that never really caught on. Yeah. I'm thinking of, did you ever watch Boardwalk Empire?
No, I didn't.
Well, it takes place right here in Atlantic City, New Jersey. And one of the things there that I thought at the time was like Atlantic City was very not progressive, it's not the right term at all. It was actually like a Republican stronghold, even though that meant something different back then. But it was definitely liberal in terms of fun and in terms of alcohol and gambling and prostitution, all that stuff. Yeah. And I always remember in the show at the wherever it was where they would always go and party, there would be like an MC type character, and it was a woman who was dressed like a man. She wore like a top hat and she wore a tuxedo, and she would kind of host the night. And I always thought that was kind of, that's kind of like countercultural. That's very subversive. You have this, this is the show literally starts, I think, on the New Year's of Prohibition, so like 1920, I always thought that was like, that's kind of cool. Like that's very, that this is back when women were very much subdued and relegated to very, certain positions in life and didn't have a lot of upward mobility. And she's out here like running this big, fun, festive event dressed as a man. Like now she's not wearing the difference is what I never liked with the drag queen was like the accentuated makeup and all of that and that sort of thing. She's just looks like a woman here, but she had like short hair and a hat on and a tuxedo. And I thought that was kind of cool. So I thought that would be like where this can go, where the female side can go. But for them to just do what these biological men are doing, like, what the hell's the point?
Yeah. And, I don't care. I couldn't care less that this exists, and obviously we're very big on freedom of expression. So sir, don whatever costumes or makeup or whatever you want. Yeah, but it's also just sort of like, I don't know. There's something that's very anti-punk rock where it's like you are adopting something that has become very mainstream. Yeah. That in your mind thinks is sort of rebellious, even though it's become very like mainstream and accessible to the public. And you're adopting it as your own, even when you're not. That's not even what you really are. You're not even adhering to the definition of it. So it's just like, why not just create your own thing? Like, why not come up with some like, I'm a female, but like I'm gonna exaggerate the shit out of it. I'm doing something completely different. It's like, okay, all right, that might be interesting. But it's like I'm a drag queen, even though I'm a woman and I'm dressing up as an exaggerated version of a woman. It's like I think you're just trying to fit in. It's just I don't know.
Yeah, if this hasn't happened already, I bet it is. Like I'm sure there's some like some sort of response to this, where there are some micro subcultures speckled throughout the United States that are going back to that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like, no, it's not like we do have parameters. You do have to, like, this is a space for these sorts of people, because like this is the inevitability of inclusivity. Like sometimes art, like it doesn't mean you can't go. I know it sounds contradictory to what I was just saying, but we're not, we're always the people who are like, no, you should be able to write the kind of story you want to do, and make the sort of movie you want to make, and sing about what you want to sing about. But it's also about authenticity. I always say that too. It's like, well, if you want to be I don't know, like a white straight guy who grew up in North Carolina, and you want to write a book about a female from Lagos, Nigeria, go for it. But like you have to, you're going to have a high bar to pass in terms of authenticity and story. And that's fine. If you want to write that story, that's fine. But it doesn't mean you can't be criticized if it sucks. And here it's like, the identity is, if you want to be like, if you're taking away the one thing that makes drag, like is drag the ridiculous outfits and the makeup, or is it like a man dressing as a woman? I think drag queens are very much a man dressing as a woman with the outlandish getup.
Yeah.
Where there have been people dressing drag since they say ancient Greece, since Shakespeare's time too. Some of that was for legal reasons. They had to.
Right.
But I don't know. I just think I didn't really look at it that way until you brought it up. Like, yeah, this is kind of typical, like where art goes when it's fucking mainlined into America, to the American culture.
Yeah.
It feels like the most forced thing. That's what I want to end on.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It feels like the most astroturfed forced thing. I don't believe this many people actually like it. I really don't.
Yeah.
It feels fake. It feels like it's a status thing. It's weird enough that people who live otherwise pretty normal lives, the vote blue no matter who, give to act blue, say something mean to Donald Trump on social media.
Yeah.
Like, it feels like it seems like they get to feel like they do something edgy by bringing their kid to a drag show and piss off, their neighbor or something if they saw it on Facebook. It doesn't seem like it's actually like it's just enough of that for them to feel something, which is what a lot of culture thrives off of, is just, can you make someone feel something? Right. And I think that's what it's doing. I don't actually think that many people like this. I'm sorry. I just don't.
Yeah. No, I agree with you, man. But so the decline of American art continues. Thanks to ideology.
Yes, it's like mainstream art, sure, but that's where fun. Like, I don't know. It's out there if you find it, if you look for it. I think it's great. That's why we do shed selections. That's why we highlight movies that we don't think get enough interest. I mean, there's a lot of art out there. I don't want to be a doomer in that sense. In fact, I think this gives us more fodder for episodes. Like it gives us something to talk about. It's just,
and also this is a very specific culture, like subculture of American, art. Like, this is not like,
I don't know. It doesn't feel like a subculture anymore, though.
That's true. This is a very specific medium. This isn't. Yeah.
This feels like it's just being impressed upon people like that. I think even a lot of people who are in these communities, like, I don't know, there's always a financial incentive, but I think from an artistic standpoint, it's like they want to be at the same parades as like credit card companies.
Yeah.
Like, when the hell, like, I'm sorry that these like consultant class people and these credit card companies and stuff do, like, this takes something away from it. I don't know. Maybe it's easy for me to say because I'm not not one of these identities, but to me, that's just kind of lame, and that the lameness is like the death of art.
Yeah. So, that's it for the drag queen.
Yeah,
it's an hour.
It's an hour and 8 minutes. Yeah, that's good. But we'll follow this stuff. Free press rules. We love it.
Yeah, even though they didn't hire me, but stay reckless, everyone.
Well, they have.
Standards. I know.
Yeah, I'm just kidding. You should apply again as soon as you can.
No, I actually just did send them another email. Just 'cause they have a general thing where it's like, if you don't see a job listed here, but you want to contribute in some way, reach out and we'll let you know. So maybe.
Cool.
All right, everybody, fight the crits.
Fight the
Stay
crits.
reckless.
Stay reckless. See you in a few days.
Yeah.